Hi folks, it's Joey with Design for Peace, and I'm here with my good friend brother Steve from OFM. Will you introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Brother Steve Jerby. My pronouns are he and him. I serve as the National Director of the Organizing for Mission Network. OFM is a network that supports faith-rooted organizing across the country, starting to expand globally, and supporting efforts like what Design for Peace is doing.
Beautiful. Thanks so much for being in some conversation with us today. So we're going to talk a bit about the cycle of sacred organizing and what we mean by that, and particularly about listening and the important place of listening as a sort of bedrock of discernment and design and experimentation, which is the core work that we're doing. Yeah. And so I kind of want to start with the cycle. Like, we talk a lot about a cycle of organizing, and can you share what is that cycle? How do you understand that?
Yeah, I think the cycle creates a pathway for folks who want to move beyond good intentions and one-off activities, but really build something in an integrated way, and that there's a process you can follow. And we talk about it as a sacred organizing cycle because we do believe in the spirituality that is rooted in this. Each phase in this builds on the previous place, so that you're listening to figure out what are the things that are most important in your community and who are the folks that you want to be building relationships and building power with. So that you can get to a place of learning and saying, well, what is it that we hope to accomplish? And what do we need to do to accomplish that? Who do we need to be finding out can make decisions that go in our way? Preparing to move into action that is not performative, but actually transformative, actually changing the lives of the folks most impacted by issues. And that we create Sabbath in this process because the world tells us to keep going, and there's always the next fight, always the next stage in the struggle. But we need space to breathe, to reflect, to celebrate, to integrate our learnings before we move forward.
Thank you. I appreciate the way that you're thinking about that. And I will share that in lots of our conversations with congregations, we find that teams who are looking at reusing, reimagining spaces often are running up against the question, how do we make decisions as a collective church, as a community, as a body, a missional body? And it's not just down to the pastor to make a decision or to the council or the session to make a decision, but it's a congregational decision. And this pathway of community organizing, this pathway of the sacred organizing cycle, I think shows us a way to build that critical mass. I think that's really, really important. And I wonder, how do you think about the way that the cycle builds on each phase?
You start with a core team that is doing the listening. You can never do this work as an individual. It's community organizing, right? And the listening process expands your we, so that you've got more folks involved in the learning and the unveiling of how is this issue really impacting folks' real lives? So that when you're moving towards a public witness or an action, you can draw on those relationships you've been building and really inspire a lot of folks.
So very practically, how do you see churches practicing listening? What does that look like?
One of the things I love about Design for Peace when they talk about the sacred encounter is that it includes a process of listening to the land itself. I'm a Franciscan. I think connecting with creation is important and part of that listening. We also want to hear what's happening with our human kinfolk. And so real practically, we do that in a couple different ways. We do listening through one-to-ones, where we're inviting somebody to sit down, spend maybe a half hour getting to know their story. We might do that in small group settings. We're going to do that within our congregation because we're going to be asking questions that are different based on this work than other conversations we've had. We're also going to be doing these conversations with folks we are just getting to know or getting to know a little bit deeper. And so it happens in various levels, but the goal is to really engage in meaningful, authentic relationships.
I do wonder whether you have some thoughts about why listening is so hard. And I think over and over again, we find that the truth is we're intimidated often by the idea of listening. And perhaps people who are listening to our conversation now are going, oh my gosh, like this is about connecting vulnerably with other people in my congregation or my community. And that's kind of scary. That's kind of intimidating. And I wonder if you could just share a bit of your experience. Like why do you think it's hard for us? Or what are some of the obstacles that we experience in being invited to listen? Like, why is that difficult, do you think?
Yeah, it is hard because it's countercultural.
Mm-hmm.
But the legacy of the church is to be countercultural. It's really asking that question of, who do I want to listen to help me understand what are the issues that my congregation, my neighborhood, my community are facing? And that is not what we're trained to do. We're trained to, listen and swipe. We're trained to keep it polite right at the surface. But if we're really wanting to build in transformational ways, we got to be willing to go deep, and we've got to be willing to share our own stories. Yeah. But we really need to hear and steward the gift of stories from others. When I'm working with leaders, I often face that challenge, and I talk about these sacred listening, this one-to-one conversations as uncommon and natural. Natural because they should feel like a real conversation. They should feel more natural than a recorded conversation for training purposes. But really connecting with the folks that are right across from you. They're intentional. They're rooted in your purpose for meeting, and you're explicit about that. Knowing why you're starting the conversation, doing that reflection internally and with others who are doing the listening is an essential first step. And that can be part of the ask. Hey, I'm from this Faith Land stewardship team. We're doing conversations throughout the community, right? You've already named faith and land are part of why you're going into the space. But ultimately, you want to get to that space where you're hearing what the person you're talking with really cares about. Yeah. You want to find out what's important to them. And so, you want to get questions that get to the dreaming element, right? If money was no object, what would you want to see happen in our community? What's something you care about so deeply that you would give up a Saturday morning to show up for? I love that question.
That's a great question.
You ask me to show up in my work hours? Sure, no problem. I'll blow off doing emails to go have a cup of coffee. But you ask me to give up time with my family and time of Saturdays, it'd have to be something I care deeply about to make that commitment. You can ask questions like, how long have you been in the neighborhood? Or tell me about who stays in your home. Those create spaces where folks will tell more than just the question you're asking, but the stories that go around it, so that you can come to understand, hey, Joey really cares about this. And that becomes really important because when we imagine the work that we're going to do later, then if the work we're doing is in alignment with something we heard from who we talked to, then, hey, I'm going to call Joey up because he might give up that Saturday morning to be a part of this. Or he might have some ideas about who we need to be engaging with to figure out how something works. The relationships are authentic and real and rooted in what folks love and care about, not to accomplish some task or goal, but to figure out how are we going to be powerful together in this community to see the world we want to see.
One of the things I hear in your description is that listening is not just about the information I get from listening to you, but the relationship we develop when I listen to you. And over again, working with congregations that are doing this work, yes, we need information. We need to know the insights, the experience people have. But what we really need is relationships.
Yeah.
We need to be a close-knit community that can take on these big projects, that can imagine together. We need to listen with our neighbors and build those relationships. And often doing this work of listening builds some of the trust and the social fabric we need to do this work.
If we've already done the data research or we've looked at the demographics or the statistics, then that has already told us where we're going. When we center the relationships in our work, then we're driven by passions, motivations, self-interest, the things that will sustain this work for the long time, and the things that have sustained our faith communities, right? The values, the shared passions, the shared interests, the hopes and yearnings that a community might carry.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing your experience. And I know that we're in this work together in the region, we're in this work together nationally. And thank you for your leadership and sharing your wisdom with us. We appreciate you.
Yeah, great to
Thanks.
be here.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.